Hello guys, welcome back to Archangel RC in these troubled times, and I only hope to be able to bring just a bit of useful entertainment during this whole situation. The Volantex Sport Cub 500, a plane that literally caught me off guard as I was expecting one thing and it turned out to be a whole different animal. For a while there I kept calling it the Super Cub 500, and I have to say there might be some truth to that, especially considering the size of this thing and what it turned out to be able to do. Unlike the Ranger 600, which is a larger plane, this one has one more control channel, so this is a 4-channel model that comes ready to fly with a remote control and a built-in stabilization unit, does have ailerons, and as a consequence one other interesting feature, but I'd get to that soon enough. Of course, you also get a battery and a charger, a user manual and a spare prop, but that should go without saying. Fun fact, the prop mounts on some quick release adapter type of thing, which snaps into place, and actually in the event of a crash it snaps off rather than breaking the prop. A very impressive design that should improve the life of those props quite a bit. As already mentioned, this is a 4-channel plane, which means it also features ailerons, which despite its size would allow for a proper flight, and this one would definitely teach you the right movements, coordination and stick commands to go bigger. In addition, the landing gear would allow you to do takeoffs from the ground rather than just throwing the plane, and landings also, which can be quite fun once you get the hang of it. I did have a Volantex Trainstar Mini a while back, but it was smaller and it was only a 3-channel model, so initially I did not think anything good of this one, thought it would have the same docile performance and limited controls, and I somehow glossed over the fact that it has ailerons until the moment it took flight. Before the flight, remember, radio on first, then power the plane. In order to arm the motor, throttle to full, then back to low, and now it should be running. Don't forget to check control surface movements from the radio and also the stabilization directions, just to make sure it is working properly. So put it on the ground, throttled up, and I don't think it even traveled 1 meter of distance before it took off, and at first the difference from the Trainstar Mini and Ranger 600 was not that obvious in the beginner mode, but as soon as I switched to the middle one, oh boy was I wrong about the assumptions I'd had of this plane, purely because of its size. All of a sudden it turned from a docile beginner-friendly model to a whole lot of fun. Loops, rolls, snaps, Harrier, it was all over the place, and it was quick, and it was agile, and it could hold its own against the strong gusts this day, even at that size. I was seriously impressed, as I was not expecting this level of performance out of something this small. It also has ample thrust to go vertical and do all sorts of maneuvers, which makes it so much fun and such a pleasure to fly. Loops were quick and snappy with all that power it had, and it could do quite a tight loop, especially if you do it against the wind. Keep in mind that the middle mode still has wing leveling, but it removes the limit, so you can do all these aerobatics while keeping the stabilization working. Rolls were not as snappy, but were doable, and with proper rudder and ailerons could be made to look quite good, I reckon. Though I'm not much into that sort of flying, so I assume somebody can do better than me, or I just have to practice more. I also managed to pull off other maneuvers, and the whole experience was quite pleasant and joyful. It would slow down against the wind considerably if you wanted to, and the stabilization is able to keep it level even with the gusts, but after all, this is what you get when you add proper ailerons to a plane and don't rely on the rudder only. At some point it almost stood in one place. You do have to play with the throttle a good deal, but it can be done, and even more interesting, makes for an impressive landing when you touch down on the spot like that. This was an epic experience. And now the really interesting bit, the plane has an aerobatic button, so when you press it, the radio will start beeping, meaning it is waiting for you to give it a command. You have to move the right stick in the direction you want, and the plane will do a loop or a roll in that direction all on its own. I assume this is meant for beginners who are not exactly aware how to do these maneuvers themselves, but it was fun to see automation like this on something so small and seemingly basic. Pushing the sticks up cancels the aerobatics beeping and returns the plane to a normal operating mode. I would recommend you go higher if you want to play with these modes, as it does tend to lose altitude on those rows. Guess nobody thought to program in the rudder and elevator countering as the plane is rolling to try and maintain that altitude. Also, the throttle is under your control the whole time, so make sure you throttle up for these maneuvers. Now, moving on to the expert mode. In these windy and gusty conditions, works as expected. The plane suddenly requires a whole lot more effort to keep flying in a straight line, as you no longer have that wing leveling working for you, although the gyro keeps working and does improve the handling in the wind, doing its best to keep the plane on track. But if you are a beginner, I'd urge you to keep away from this mode at first until you get some more experience, and then only try using it in calm conditions. A light and agile plane in windy weather with inexperienced fingers on the sticks can lead to some pretty interesting results, and by interesting I mean requiring repair, or in the worst of cases, a new plane. The beauty of this one is the fact that it has ailerons, and that is a huge deal and improvement compared to a 3-channel model that only comes with a working elevator and a rudder, and I would say this one is even more suited to learn to fly on, even more so than the Ranger 600, exactly because of this. It is a bit more agile and snappy, but you'd get used to that, and the beginner mode should keep you safe until you get a good dozen flights under your belt and get a good feel for it, so you can move on to the other modes. But once you get to those, you'd be able to experience something you never can do with a 3-channel setup, and that would be quite useful later on when you eventually move on to larger aircraft. I was also quite surprised by the flight time this plane had. I did not fly it calmly, and I still did over 10 minutes of flight and landed just because I felt like it, not because I felt much reduction in the power, maybe just a little. I also was quite happy with the way I was able to land it against the wind. So much fun. I really can't express it. In all the flights I did not see something that would bother me with this one, or a drawback. Perhaps maybe only the prop mounting scheme, as it is non-standard and does require you get props for this model specifically, but Volantex do have spare props and batteries, so you can even get a few ahead of time just in case. Additional batteries would be a good idea too. I have to say, this plane definitely got me excited because it is good enough to get people engaged, interested and enthusiastic about flying and help them sink deeper into this hobby. I suppose FPV can be added to it, much like I did with the Trainstar Mini, but I will tell you here and now, I am not going to be ruining this one by mounting anything additional on it. It is perfect just the way it is, and I will keep it that way, and I will take it with me often, and I will fly it as it is. It is so much fun, and quite possibly at some point I might put it in the hands of a complete beginner just to see how things would go, but I am optimistic. The plane is good and the would-be pilot is reliable. But all of these are things to come. Until then, links for all items shown and used can be found in the description below, and buying literally anything through them would support this channel at no additional cost to you, and you will have my eternal gratitude, as this is my full-time job. Another way you can support me is Patreon. The link is also there, and I would like to say a big thank you to all the people who have supported me so far in any way and would continue to do so. If you have enjoyed this video and found it useful, please feel free to like, share and subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to also hit that bell button so you can be notified when I upload a new one. Also consider following me on Facebook for more regular-ish updates. Happy and safe flying, and I will see you in the next one.